Hi, welcome to our session today, where we'll be talking about how to automate and simplify multi-cloud complexity with F5 and HashiCorp. I am Lori Mac Vittie, and I'm thrilled that you've taken time out of your very busy day to view this session, and I hope it is a good use of your time today. So let's get started. You know, back when I was in IT, in the trenches, IT was about knowing technology. We were technologists. It was about connecting devices and configuring infrastructure and services. It was about deploying applications and even just making sure that the printer was working. It wasn't about understanding processes and people. But today, IT is about transforming business so that it can succeed in a digital economy. IT is no longer just about support for or services to the business. In many cases, it is the business. You know, my CIO back in the day, on his first announcement to the entire company, said that we were not in the business of IT. We were a logistics company, a transportation company. And I always found that somewhat amusing because the business relied on one application that routed and dispatched and made sure that things moved and trucks were in the right places. Without that application, the business was hampered. It couldn't actually scale or work efficiently. So over the years, it's become apparent that we were in the business of IT, actually, and most companies are in that position today, especially with forces outside of our control, accelerating our digital transformation. Applications are the primary way that we communicate, that we collaborate, that we engage with customers, that we do business with both partners and consumers. So it's hard to say that we're not in the business of IT. But conversely, it's hard for IT to say that we're not in the business, because we most certainly are. And the problem with all of this transition to online everything is that emotions are really high, especially when things go wrong, because we depend on technology more than ever before. But the good news is that we can get through this by taking a step back and focusing on what matters. And that's really people, because every aspect of technology today is focused on the experience of people. And I don't mean just customer experience, even though that's what digital transformation tends to focus on. I mean the experience of the operators and the developers who have to interact with the technology to deliver the applications for the customers. I mean, every single day we are interacting with applications on our TV, when we work, when we relax, when we pay our bills, even to get our groceries, we're using an app today. So it's all about the experience. And we only have 24 hours in a day for all these experiences. So we shouldn't have to wait for an app to respond, or for an approval to push code, or for an instance to launch, right? Our time is too valuable to waste. Now, all of these people are ultimately connected by the code that is developed and delivered and ultimately consumed, whether it lives in the cloud or on premises. So if we're going to value the time of all of these people, we have to address the challenges that impact each of them. And today we're going to focus on multi-cloud and its challenges, because our research tells us that 51% of organizations operate in at least 2 to 6 different public cloud properties. And 97% of them report that they have challenges because of that reality. And it's also because the session title says that's what we're going to focus on. So let's talk about multi-cloud challenges. So back in the day when we scaled out a business, we did it with a secondary and even a tertiary data center. So we duplicated data centers in order to scale our business. And when we say duplicated, we mean everything, down to the hardware, the connections, the wiring, right? The infrastructure, all of the platforms, all of the applications, everything was a complete duplicate of the original data center. And we could just send people there and it would be like the same experience. But today, we don't do that. Cloud computing has changed how we duplicate, how we scale the business. Now we use cloud. Now we use multiple clouds, according to research, to scale out the business. But when we do that, we don't have the same control that we used to. We used to have complete control over even the brand of server that we used. Now today, we don't have that. We have control over some of it, but a lot of it is just whatever we're given, right? Especially at the networking layer. So we don't duplicate as much of the original data center, which means that we put together a new data center using a variety of hardware, of software, and sometimes even tools. Now, it's that heterogeneity, that difference in tools that causes some of our stress because we're overwhelmed by the number of different systems we need to interact with on a daily basis just to do our jobs. Simply managing one application or finding out the status of one application can mean we have to go to multiple dashboards in order to figure out what's going on, right? And the last thing we want or need is yet another console or yet another dashboard and another API, right? We don't need any more tools to complicate our already complicated workflows because this is not Pokemon. You don't have to catch them all, and there's no prize if you do, okay? But that said, I mean, applications still need a lot of those tools. Now, specifically by tools, I mean the application services that are used to deliver and secure and scale those applications, because apps are not designed or developed with certain operational functions in mind. Those operational functions are inserted during deployment between the application and the end user, right, to provide scale and security and speed. They provide critical operational and business functions that are required. You can't have an application experience without most of these services. Now, the problem with this is that they're a heterogeneous mix. There is no one vendor that you go to and you get all your app services. It doesn't work that way. It's a mix of commercial, of cloud-based, and open source solutions. And each one comes with its own operational console, its own API, its own dashboard, and its own policies and policy language. Now, the majority of organizations, 69%, use 10 or more different application services to scale, secure, and speed up applications. Each environment, each cloud, adds even more complexity because we're mixing and matching application services from multiple sources. More consoles, more dashboards, more models, right? So it makes a very complex process just to deploy an application in a multi-cloud reality. And the good news is that from this complexity arises an opportunity to simplify. Now, when we're talking about simplification, we have to recognize that application services span the entire IT organization. There is no single application services team that delivers all of the different services that need to be in place for applications to be scaled and secured and delivered. There's SecOps, there's NetOps, there's IT Ops, there's even Dev and DevOps. Now, the problem with this is that our organizations are primarily, well, nearly half of IT, right, operates in very siloed teams. So these are distinct entities within IT that don't necessarily collaborate well together. So we have siloed teams, which introduces friction into the handoffs during a deployment process because the app services span all of these different groups, but the groups don't necessarily have processes between them for how to hand things off, right? How to do that efficiently. So we not only need to be technologists, now we need to be process experts, And we also need to be diplomats because we have to deal with people in order to get them to collaborate and understand their processes. So here's a more concrete example of what I mean. This is a typical IT, enterprise IT organization going to deploy a new application. And there are different functions involved, and there are many different tasks that are required. So a lot of individual tasks that have to be done in this overall process, right? Because that's what a workflow is a strung together set of tasks. Now, in this process, there are usually a lot of tickets. Tickets get submitted for new servers, for new IP addresses, to register with DNS, to open up a port in the firewall. And these are often handled by completely different people. So even though it's an application, it's an automated process to submit a ticket, there is still a person who has to go get that ticket and then do the work. It's not an automated workflow. It's just an automated ticket system, which is not nearly as efficient as it could be. You see, we can reduce that complexity of that process and reduce the friction and make it faster by reducing the number of tools and languages and all the pieces that have to be handled in those little tasks, and by sharing tools. Sharing tools means we can share skills, we can share knowledge, and we can reduce friction because we're all speaking the same language. We're all speaking the same console. We're all speaking the same API. Now, by doing that, it means that the same processes can be used again and again and again, which leads to fewer defects and fewer problems and greater efficiencies. Because there's a reason that people trust code that's been running for 40 years, because it has been run and tested and fixed and run and tested and fixed over and over for decades. There are very few bugs and defects in that code today. So people trust it. And that's what we want to do with deployments, is we want to get them to the point that they are automated and repeatable so that we can work out all of the problems with them, find all of the issues, and make them as efficient as possible so they run smoothly across all these groups and all these different application services. If we do that, what we get is a simplified workflow, because we found all of these places, right, where we've got delays and where we've got manual handoffs, and we've automated them. And we have raised the level of the process to just what's needed and used automation to take care of all the little steps in between, so that we're no longer asking people to stop and get a ticket and go do a task and then come back and send it back on to the next person. We're letting the automation do that, and we're moving it up to a higher level so that when we say go, it automatically moves through all of these processes and comes out with an automated workflow that scales, that's repeatable across multiple applications. Now, today we're going to focus on some of the challenges that arise from those multi-cloud models, specifically around those tools that we're using, those automation tools, those operational tools, those consoles, how to modernize application needs so that you can scale and repeat those processes, and how to use agnostic application services in order to reduce the number of tools and the complexity that's needed to maintain compliance and consistency. So back when I started at F5, right, we had load balancing. We're very good at load balancing. We know how to do that. People today still refer to their load balancers as the F5. But we realized a long time ago that load balancing wasn't enough, that there were other needs that applications had, that they had a need for security, they had a need for failover to other sites, redundancy, business continuity. We understood that APIs were starting to become something that needed to be managed and secured. We understood that bots and security threats were a significant risk not just to our applications and users, but to our very business. So through acquisitions and organic development, we have expanded our capabilities and skill sets across IT functions and cloud properties. So we can operate in any cloud, and we can operate across a wide variety of needs that applications have. And that means that you can standardize on application services from F5, use them in any cloud, in any environment, and get consistency. That means the same dashboard, the same APIs, the same consoles that allow you to create repeatable deployment processes that span all of IT. And that's going to lead to simpler workflows and greater efficiencies. Now, when we talk about those tools, complex tools aren't helpful either, right? If you have to learn a very complex language or tool set in order to accomplish your automation, that's not going to be good either. So automating a single task is very easy, right? You can write a bash script, a shell script to go out and update a firewall rule pretty easily. But when you start talking about automation at the process level, across all of IT and all these different application services and cloud properties, it gets really complex really fast. And we've worked hard to make it simpler with tool sets and integrations with companies like HashiCorp, who also work very hard to make automation simple, right? They are trying to simplify as well. And together, we can actually reduce the complexity and make that high-level automation a lot simpler, because we believe that automation isn't worth it unless it's simple. So our integration with HashiCorp starts with BigIP and Terraform. So we have a BigIP provider for Terraform that plugs in, and it allows you to templatize a provisioning of BigIP in any cloud property. You can do it on premises too, but you can also do it in any cloud property. So what that means is that you can use the same kind of template to provision BigIP in all of the cloud properties. So you're reducing complexity by saying, hey, I can use the same set of processes and tools here to deploy BigIP in any environment. And that's important because BigIP is the basis for all of those different application services. So now you can deploy the same web app firewall in AWS as you do in Azure, as you do in Google Cloud, and it's going to be consistent. So it's going to reduce the complexity because you're working with the same tools, the same policies, the same dashboards. It's going to reduce complexity. It's going to make life easier for you. But day zero provisioning is not enough, right? You have to go beyond. Auto scale is not a nice to have anymore. It's expected. You have to automatically scale applications because we don't expect operators to sit and wait and launch instances and add them to a BigIP to make sure that they're available. We expect that that happens automatically. So we integrate with Consul to take advantage of its service discovery capabilities so that it can be automatically updating BigIP whenever a new application instance is launched. And when it does that, it gets added to a pool, and that means that BigIP automatically knows that it can send traffic to it. So it's automatically scaling, and it's also automatically descaling, downscaling, right? It's going up and down with demand. So you're not wasting resources either. You're automatically being very efficient about when you scale up and when you scale back down. And that all happens because of our integration of BigIP with Consul. But let's not forget about NGINX Plus. Okay, NGINX is part of F5. In case you haven't heard, it's been about a year now. And NGINX is one of the most popular, most used ingress control options for modern applications. And that means that it really needs to integrate with services like Consul as well, because it needs to be automatically updated when new containers come online and when they're decommissioned. It needs that same kind of dynamic up and down scale in order to make sure that applications are being scaled out and available to customers. So NGINX and Consul also work together for day 2 and onward operations to enable auto scale and simplify the complexity involved in modern applications, which is very high. I believe the average container lifespan is less than 5 minutes now. So if you can imagine having an operator just sitting there waiting and updating different configurations, I'm not sure we could keep up anymore. And we shouldn't expect people to do that kind of work. That's something that can be easily automated. And when you use something like NGINX Plus or Big IP with Consul, you get that auto scale, you get that simplicity of operations that makes day-to-day life a lot easier because it's handled automatically and on demand. Now, finally, not every application, I know this will surprise some people, but not every application is a modern cloud-native containerized model. Some of them are still written in languages like COBOL and C or Java, J2EE. So, I mean, I've written code that is still running. My mother has written code that is still running, and that's a long time. I won't say how long, but it's a long time. But trust me, containers were not a thing back then. They weren't. But these apps are often core to the business. That's why they're still running. They are so core, and it would be so expensive to rewrite them or refactor them into different models because they're so tied into so many other applications. So they're critical, and they are called traditional or legacy or historical, but I call them important applications. But sometimes a modern, an emerging application needs to connect to that application, or it needs to integrate with that application. It needs to talk to that application. And sometimes that new application is in the cloud while that legacy application is on premises. And you need to have a secure connection for that. You need to have a way to get those two to connect and to communicate securely. So one of our integrations is with Consul Service Mesh, which handles scale and management of containerized applications, so cloud native applications. And we provide a terminating gateway for that service mesh that enables a secure communication between it and traditional applications. So we're bridging the architectures, we're bridging the environments. We're making sure that there is a secure connection between the two, and we're enabling the reuse of existing technology while enjoying the benefits of modern technology. Because today, we're not just technologists, we're also business analysts. And we have to understand the hard and soft costs of each of the architectures and locations that we're deploying applications in. And this is one of the ways that we can enjoy the investment that we've already had and yet take advantage of modern application architectures. So we also believe that automation is not worth it if it's not repeatable. It has to be simple and it has to be repeatable. And that's because if you're writing scripts to deploy applications, for every application that you deploy, you're basically just moving where that manual work might be. Instead of manually handing off and doing individual tasks, now you're manually coding automation scripts. It's not scalable because eventually you run out of people to write those scripts and maintain them, right? You want repeatable scale. So you want a way to be able to continually use the same basis for automation across multiple applications. And that includes things like your auto scale in your environment, your operational scale. So you just don't want to write multiple scripts. You want to templatize and be able to repeat that scale as much as you can because it's more efficient. It will help you work out the bugs and the defects with it. You'll reduce the number of errors and downtime that you're going to experience, and you will find it will be a much more pleasant experience in the end. It enables that self-service for developers, right? Continuous delivery and deployment should be one process from building the code to delivering it, to deploying it, to the user having it. And we're not quite at that point, but we can get there if we start automating and all of these different processes into a repeatable workflow that can move from one end to the other and actually deliver an application in a predictable, repeatable way. And that's going to simplify your operational environment by making sure that you can use the same scripts and you don't have to keep recreating the wheel or recreating new wheels. So our partnership with HashiCorp is really focused on reducing the complexity of deploying and operating applications and infrastructure in a multi-cloud world remotely. Multi-cloud meant we were already remote, and now we're even remote from the data center. So we really have to focus on simplifying how we do that, because we're going to be doing it for a while. Now, we think HashiCorp's cloud operating model provides a great guide for simplifying operations and enjoying the benefits of automation from day 0 onward, right, to day 2 and 5 and day 10. Can we get rid of all of the dashboards and consoles and APIs? No, we can't. But we can reduce and simplify deployment and operations and keep your inbox a little lighter and your days at your desk a little shorter. So I know it's a stressful time to be in IT. Digital transformation has been accelerated by forces beyond our control, and we're being asked to step up beyond technology. We're going to have to become process and people and even business experts. But the good news is that you've got this. You've got the tools, and you've got the architectures, and you've got the means to simplify the complexity that's inherent in that new world. And we can be the IT that delivers exceptional experiences to developers and to operations, and ultimately to the customers that are enjoying those applications to do business with you. We have some resources where you can learn more about our partnership, our solutions, dig deeper into the reference architectures that we offer, and learn more about the HashiCorp Cloud Operating Model, which is a very good guide and a good place to start if you're trying to figure out how to simplify using automation, not just of individual tasks, but across all IT constituents. I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day and spending it with me talking about simplification and automation and F5 and HashiCorp. And I hope that you have a very wonderful day and you stay healthy and safe. Thank you.